not started yet. Takes a second. Jeez.
It doesn't say live. Oh, it says live now.
I'll say I get the little live.
Okay, now you can do whatever you want. It's party like a rock star. Oh, before we start.
Oh, okay.
We just take turns with the questions. So just so you know, like you're gonna hit like a topic with Chris, and then you'll hit like a topic with me.
So feel free to jump in, talk over each other. If you want to bring up something and we want to run down a rabbit hole for like 15 minutes, do it, man.
Yell, scream.
Yeah, the show sheet. The show sheet is more of just what's that line from Pirates of the Caribbean? This is just more of a guide, not really a set of rules or anything like that. That's exactly what we got going on right here. So nothing too strict.
The Dynasty Owner's Manual Code.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly.
Parlay.
Yeah, parlay.
Oh God! Wait, Zach, are you singing live? That was the deal, right?
Was I supposed to?
Is he?
I can't do.
Yeah, I think so. You said that. I've got it somewhere.
I can't do 4-part harmony like the next week. You wait for next week's show. I got 4-part harmony coming.
Okay. Oh my goodness!
I'm doing the Beach Boys.
Woo!
So yeah.
Dude, I loved your kid doing the DJ Chark one. That was
it was both of them. It was my 5-year-old, my 3-year-old started, then my 5-year-old, and then somehow I wrote my wife. She didn't know I was recording, and so we got her in there, and then I did it, and then I like put them all together, and it came out really, really good. And the best part about it is it's in John Boscher's head still.
Dude, I had never heard it. I didn't know it was a global phenom until after your kids sang it and your wife.
Yeah.
So you're saying you don't have kids?
No, I don't. I am married.
You made it very obvious with that statement right there.
Yeah. But I have seen Moana 3 times. It's a great movie.
Oh, you haven't seen it enough then? It was on our house on repeat. Now that's the Spider-Man movie that's on repeat in my house.
Oh, well, that's a fantastic movie. That should be on repeat.
Oh, yeah, I'm not upset about that at all.
We watch Puppy Dog Pals every morning at 5 o'clock.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I can't get. Yeah,
I was kind of bummed when I saw that the Spider-Man movie was animated. I thought it was a person like the other Spider-Man movies. I'm like, man, this is gonna suck. No, that was a great movie.
It was awesome, absolutely awesome. All right, so now that we're live, can we actually do stuff now?
Sure, I guess.
You don't want my 3-part breakdown of Magic School Bus?
No. No, I could talk your ears off about some Paw Patrol. If we're being quite honest, we can go down that rabbit hole if you really want to.
I'll send you my Scott Fishbowl Paw Patrol theme song when we're done. I'll throw it in the DM.
Yes.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome, man. Okay. All right, let's do this real quick.
All right.
Okay. All right, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Chris Allen of the Dynasty Owner's Manual podcast.
And I'm Adam Wilde, and I'll start us off with the foreword. First, we've got T-shirts still available, FF_outfitters on Twitter. That's Justin Barlow. He's been hooking us up. That's straight off Amazon. We know you love that Prime. We've also got Best Ball Owner's Manual coming up with Brad Reyes. I cannot wait to get that started. I know everybody's itching for those MFL 10s, that draft. And then lastly, we've got Debbie Owner's Manual, absolutely killing it. They dropped their Combine episode the other day, and we'll be talking about Combine today.
Yeah, the big thing that everybody's talking about right now with the Combine actually just ending over this past week. There's so much content that people are putting out right now, and there was no way we couldn't have these two fellas on the show tonight. And just for everyone to get a peek back behind the curtain, this is the fun part about trying to schedule podcasts and get guests on this particular show. So, I mean, we're all adults here, and everybody's either got families, we've got wives, we've got jobs, we've got other commitments. So, at least a gentleman weeks ago, but because of scheduling conflicts and whatnot, that's the best night, because with the Combine over, and we have some. There's no the Dynasty Dummies here in front of us tonight to talk with you folks. So, first and foremost, thanks again for taking the time to sit down and actually speak with us about the Combine. And we'll just go ahead and get right into it. So, for somebody that's let's say new to Dynasty, or even for some of the veterans, that are, maybe fun to care about this event of the guys, the prospects running around in spandex, getting all these times. Why should we care about hand size Twitter, hype Twitter now with Kyler Murray? Why should we even bother to care about some of the stuff that we're seeing scrolling across Twitter over the past week or so?
Simple answer: you shouldn't. Question mark.
It doesn't matter. Yes, another thing that doesn't matter. Combine doesn't matter. Hashtag.
It does and it doesn't, and I think it's kind of, Zach's gonna laugh that it's coming from me, but I hate this term of don't double count. I think we all know not to double count. I don't know that we need to be reminded of it anymore, but at the same time, don't put too much weight in the numbers, in the 40. And I think that's the 40 is really the biggest thing, because everyone wants to look at the 40 and how fast did they run a 4.4 or whatever. It's about more of that. And I look at, personally, I look a lot at that weights and BMIs, and then I look at agility and acceleration stuff. So your broad jumps and your verticals. So yeah, it's kind of important, but it's more of a real affirmation to what you saw on film.
All right, enough of your numbers. Get those out of here. The drills at the combine matter because the NFL says they matter. And the NFL is who's putting on this combine, and the teams care about what guys do in the drill, and it affects draft capital. It affects where guys are drafted in rounds. It affects trade ups. It affects trade backs. You've seen guys fall crazy amounts because of the combine. You saw Dalvin Cook drop to the second round because he ran a 7.27 on the 3-cone. I mean, like, all of this stuff matters because it matters to the NFL. Does it actually matter in terms of football? Probably not as much as they give it credit for, but that's why it matters. And for me, it matters because I'm a film guy. And in order to go back and look at film, I have to have some reference point of whether or not I missed something. And there's a chance. I mean, that happens. I'm not perfect. Kyle will be the first one to tell you that. And
I the same thing about Adam. It's okay.
and
it is
and so
true.
that's it. It's does what I've seen on tape line up with what I'm seeing at the combine? Does a guy is a guy a burner, and did he run that 40? Is a guy getting open in space with lateral agility, and is his 3-cone and short shuttle good? Is he explosive, and does he have that burst? Is he jumping high in the vertical? Is he doing all the stuff? Plus, you can go back and you can watch these guys do the gauntlet and that sort of thing, and so you can get kind of a clearer picture of a running back in his hands or a receiver, and is he double catching and that sort of thing, because you're getting 5 or 6 catches in a row instead of watching film where you might see him make that play once.
And I think you bring up an important point in that I think the very first thing that you were talking about, in that the way that we value the combine should be, at least in some part, how the NFL values the combine, because if their draft stock is affected by if they don't run fast enough, or if they slip up, or they drop a pass, or they drop a ball during one of the drills, that affects where they're going to go in the draft. That affects how we value them as players, and possibly how many reps they're going to get and how quickly they can get integrated into their respective offenses once they're drafted. So it all should matter, but especially for some of the extremes, that's where we kind of get into trouble. And so I wanted to get, since it's still something that I'm seeing across Twitter right now, the whole issue with DK Metcalf. So now we have this guy. 2 weeks ago, we were looking at the pictures of him being all rocked up, and he just looks like this absolute monster. And then he goes out and runs the 4.340. But his what was it? Was his 3-cone? Was that the one that
were both bad?
Yeah, they were both pretty terrible. So of course, but everybody still goes back to the 4.340 time, and they want to make the Julio Jones comparisons and all those sorts of things. So when it comes to that, is that where you guys want to try and immediately pump the brakes and say, hold on, there's a lot more that we have to take into account before we start saying DK Metcalf, he's the 101, write it in pen. I mean, and keep going down that rabbit hole. I mean, those are the types of cases where we need to make those compensations for what we see and take everything in totality.
I think DK is the perfect example of how not to overreact to the combine.
Mhm.
And we actually went really far down this rabbit hole
Yes, you did.
just the other night. And I think it's a great conversation piece because Mr. Jake Anderson, the
Mr. Metcalf,
leader of the Metcalf fan club, he and I have talked, Zach and he and I have talked, and we've all had this conversation about Metcalf, but 4.33 is what we expected. And I think that's really important. If you watched him on film before the combine, if you saw this, you saw elite speed, you saw elite get off and release, and the ability to track the ball down the field. And so he is going to be a great down the field player. The questions about him before the combine, when you watched him on film, was what could he do underneath? What could he do in other parts of the field? And the agility stuff is concerning, but it's not it's not a true negative, because that's not how he wins. He wins by going down the field, by being faster than everybody else, by getting off the line faster, by being powerful. And so the fourth, it all goes together to say the 4.3340 is what we expected, so that shouldn't move him up.
Right.
The agility stuff, the 3-cone and the shuttle, shouldn't really move him down, because that's not what we were looking at him for. And if anything, the positive to take away from this is it may make him a little bit of a safer pick, in the sense that he might go higher in the NFL draft now, and then therefore is likely to get more of a chance if he doesn't hit immediately. Think Kevin White, that didn't pan out, but he got chance after chance after chance, and wasn't set aside because he wasn't a later pick. Some may think that Corey Davis is not flashing yet, but he's getting those chances year after year so far. We like Corey Davis, but that's a whole different conversation.
We like, at least I like
His chance.
Yeah.
John Ross keeps getting chances, and I think he's a little bit of a
he ever
different
got his
conversation.
chance. He got one carry in his first year. He fumbled it and didn't see the ball the rest of the year.
Well, he got hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that's and some of that was Kevin White's issue too.
Mhm.
And we don't want to see any of these prospects come in and get hurt and then get hurt and then get hurt. We don't want to see that. But I do think that the 4.33 will move him up some draft boards, and if he ends up going high in the NFL draft, that is a positive in the sense of the draft capital, right? That he will get that chance. I will personally, as it stands right now, I will not be taking him 101 though.
Oh, absolutely not. That's because N'Keal Harry is 101. But I digress here, because in talking Metcalf, I was dreading going into the combine. And let me first start by, I've been able to toe that line with Jake because I do like Metcalf, and I'm not moving him all the way down, behind A.J. Brown, who was more productive than him. I understand that there's some film that can fill that in. So
you mean the 101, right? A.J. Brown, that A.J. Brown. I'm just clarifying. I want to make sure.
That one. So when I saw Metcalf, I'm like, man, he is absolutely going to be in the 101 conversation almost exclusively after the combine, because of what Kyle mentioned earlier, which is double counting that everyone talks about, but then everybody still does it, in my opinion, because you watched the film and you could have been watching film since the end of the Super Bowl, which is why I don't dig in that much until sometimes even after they've been drafted, because you watch that film so much that you get your own confirmation bias when the combine comes around. It's like, man, that guy looks fast on film. When he gets that breakaway on perfect release against Alabama and goes deep, it's like, he is a freak. And then he goes to the combine, it's like, oh yeah, he's a freak, and you should shrug because you already established that. But instead, people get this confirmation bias where they did the work, and now it's almost like they're being paid for their work, even though you're not drafting them yet. You just saw that he was fast with underwear and not with pads. So that's where I get like the issue with the double counting, because now you have to talk about DK and then one-on-one conversation. And this is being very well said, but I completely disagree with it. People are saying that DK Metcalf is the A+ ceiling and the B- floor, and N'Keal Harry is the A- upside and the B+ floor. And I just don't see that. I see the A+ ceiling with N'Keal Harry as well, and the production. So I think even though we don't care about the combine, or we shouldn't care too much about the combine, completely agree that the NFL cares, which is why a lot of us could be better than GMs, I think. But since the NFL cares, people are expecting, Metcalf to jump over Harry, and they're just painting the narrative going to the Bills and Josh Allen's huge arm. So it's really hard to take the combine and care about some things, which we're going to talk about today, and not care about others.
Well, and it's so hard, I think, not to fall in love with some of these players. You watch them and you get your eyes on them first, and you see, what's going on with their production and what's going on with their film, and then all of a sudden you see this at the combine, and it's really hard not to just be like, yeah, I saw that. That's my guy. That's my,
I'm still in love with Samaje Perine.
Yeah, exactly. Case in point. And I mean, look, I was on John Kelly last year. I mean, like, you see these guys, but I was on John Kelly until he was drafted in the 6th round and he was behind Gurley. And then you've got to step back and say, okay, the NFL is telling me something different, and I've got to adjust. So the more information you get, you have to adjust your process. You have to adjust your thinking. And if you're not doing that, you're really missing out. And I do that not just from the combine perspective, but you talk about some of these metrics guys. I mean, you have Peter Howard on here. I mean, he's practically a co-host at this point, I think.
Pretty much, he could actually trade me for a co-host.
I saw that. That was the whole cook. Adam and Peter have terrible taste in cookies, but it's an entirely different.
I feel like we should just turn this into the Girl Scout cookie debate 2.0. We'll just reignite that whole thing.
But you take, at least I do, numbers from all of these guys, Peter Howard and Jesse Reeves and Frisco Josh Hermsmeyer, and all of these different guys, Jake Rickroad, and they have a process, they have numbers, and Kyle does the same thing. I mean, he likes to pretend he's not a metrics guy, but he really is good. He's got the dummy cheat sheet, and so they have their numbers, they have their threshold stats, and the stats that they want to see from guys, and the numbers they want to see from guys in the combine. And I take note of that, because if they see something in a player that I'm not seeing, I'm going to go back and see if I see that.
No, and I think that's the right process that you should take in order to approach looking at that. It should be, to me at least, thinking about it logically, the combine should be more of a confirmation of what you had seen on tape, or either through your metrics or any analytical process that you had taken up to that particular date. Now, if what you see on the combine doesn't jive with the conclusions you've already made, that's where you need to go back, readjust, look at some of the stuff, look at either the metrics or the film again to confirm what you saw, or if you saw things correctly, or maybe you need to adjust a couple of things, and then maybe make a new, or come to a new conclusion as to how you value that particular player. But I guess the other part to this, I guess my question is 2 parts, because we have the one event being the combine, but then we just had the Senior Bowl, I mean, a few weeks, last month. So do you guys look at both of those events? Because I think when it comes to the combine and the Senior Bowl, people really love looking at the combine and seeing all the information, the metrics, the times, the sizes, and all that come out of the combine. But when it comes to the Senior Bowl, for me at least, it seems like a lot of scouts, a lot of beat writers, and a lot of those, the media presence hones in on the Senior Bowl to actually see some of those players and their technique. So is it more of would the film guys get more out of watching the Senior Bowl, hearing about the Senior Bowl, and maybe it just caters to that particular crowd and we just don't get too much of that? I guess do you guys have an understanding or feeling as to why we seem to, I guess, favor the Combine over the Senior Bowl?
I would say that the Senior Bowl is much more important for NFL teams than it is for us. We get something tangible out of the Combine. We don't out of the Senior Bowl because we don't know what's being called. If they had behind the scene information happening from the Senior Bowl as it was all going on, and you knew what the play calls were and you knew everything, you could get more out of it. And it's just like you'll hear people talk about they can't really scout offensive line play because you don't know what the blocking assignments are. There's a lot of truth to that in any game, and even looking at film on some of these college players, you don't know exactly what their assignment is, so you're making kind of a best guess as to what you think they were supposed to do, and then how they reacted to that. Did that running back take the right hole? Now, going back to the Senior Bowl, the NFL teams that are involved in coaching those games, I think it's extremely important for them because they get hands-on experience with those players. They get to coach those players and work with those players, and they get to interact with them. From our side of things, we don't get any of that information. So I think it is really tough. It's nice to watch. It's nice to see some of these players, and sometimes you get some names out of it. And you go, okay, this is a guy I need to go take a look at. I haven't yet, or I need to take a deeper look at. Versus going back to the Combine, you get tangible numbers out of the Combine, so it's something you can actually work with. You also have drills that you know exactly what's supposed to happen in that drill. The receiver's supposed to run out, turn right, catch the ball, do whatever. You know what they're supposed to do, and you see it from player after player after player. And so as a TV watcher, as a fantasy guy who's sitting on my couch watching this, I can actually make a true judgment from that.
The thing I love about the Senior Bowl and the kind of the All-Star Bowl games at the end of the college season is, Kyle kind of touched on it, you get names, and you get some of these small school guys. You get to see Andy Isabella, you get to see Wes Hills, you get to see guys that play in small conferences, play on teams where they're obviously head and shoulders above the rest of the players on their team and in their conference. You get them lined up against legit competition. You get them lined up against the best of the best. And so you see Andy Isabella for the first time compete against guys who have potential to play in the NFL. You see Wes Hills run against guys who have potential to be in the NFL. And so that for me is pretty valuable because you're hearing names and you're also seeing whether or not a guy can compete at the next level. And then the other part of it is it's just another chance to get looks at some of these guys. The more reps you see, the more you see them run routes, the more you see them, pick a hole, make a move, and put on the jets, the better. And so that's for me is the more information. I'm never going to poo-poo information. I'm never going to just dismiss it. I'm going to take in everything I possibly can.
So then fast forwarding this so now we've had the Senior Bowl, obviously, Combine, obviously. So then the next step are the pro days. So we're going to see more of Kyler Murray. Hopefully, I think for some of the running back enthusiasts, Holyfield gets a chance to redo and maybe improve on his Combine performance. Yeah, but that's where I kind of wanted to take that particular question. So when it comes to pro days, is it really more of you only care about, I guess, double checking some of the players that didn't really meet your thresholds or your expectations for the Combine, or are you going into the pro days with any sort of other expectations? Is there more information than you're looking for, or if a player's already checked all the boxes from the Combine, you're good, you're just waiting for the NFL draft?
I love the pro days myself. Because you have a lot of different things going on. You have a lot of these players won't do all the drills for whatever reason at the Combine. And sometimes like an A.J. Brown will go back to Ole Miss and do his agility tests where he didn't at the Combine. And so now you have those numbers. And for the sake of the cheat sheet that we do, it gives me a complete score. So I love it from that side of things. But I also, a guy like Holyfield, I think is a great example where he might have just had an off day. He doesn't look like a guy that runs 4.78. So if he comes out to a pro day and he runs a faster speed, I'm gonna look at that and I'm gonna factor that in. Now, when we talk about these times, we need to adjust the times a little bit. So in the case of like a 40, you add, I believe off the top of my head, it's a 0.05 to that kind of normalizes it with the combine. And we need to keep that kind of stuff in mind, that the hand timing that they do at pro days isn't always quite as accurate as the laser timing that they do at the combine. And so when a guy goes out and he runs a 4.2, maybe that's not right. And we need to adjust it or look that might be out of the range of reality. But I do like that it gives a lot of these guys a second chance. And then the smaller school guys that didn't get an invite to the combine, you mentioned West Hills, didn't get invited. Not a major guy on my radar, but I'd still like to see the numbers. And so, I'll be looking for his pro day numbers to get a little bit of an idea.
Yeah, and that for me is the real big one. I mean, you mentioned the guys who didn't do all the testing. That's fine. You get those numbers. You can relay what that means to me because I don't math. But it's the guys that didn't get an invite. It's I'm going to be really focused in on the 22nd of this month. Eastern Michigan is doing their pro day, and they've got a guy coming up to work out at their pro day named Trey Brock, who's played in the same conference as Ashton Doolin. He's 6'3". He was almost as productive in terms of percentage of his offense as Doolin was. He was more productive counting stats. And it's guys like that I'm really excited about.
I need to tell everyone listening a secret right now. I have heard the name Trey Brock more in the last few weeks than any other name I've ever heard out of Zach. So what you need to know is this guy is very much on Zach's radar. Keep an eye on him.
I got Ashton Doolin from all the numbers guys, because Ashton Doolin's, his market share popped and all of that stuff. And obviously he came in and ran a pretty good 40. He was under 4.5. He was like 4.43 or something like that. He's fast. I watched this film, and the first game I watched of Ashton Doolin, Trey Brock had 170 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. And I'm just watching this guy. I'm like, I'm supposed to be watching Ashton Doolin, who's fine, but he's not using his speed unless they're handing him the ball off or hitting him on a bubble screen. Like, he's not doing anything, on his routes. He's not, his breaks aren't great, that sort of thing. But I'm watching Trey Brock just eat up that, the other team. And I'm like, man, this guy. And so, yeah, he's kind of a pet project of mine, and I'm interested to see if he gets any run. He's a long shot. It's kind of that Adam Thielen story. Like, there's not a great chance that he hits, but if he does well at his pro day, somebody takes notice, all of a sudden you see his name drafted in the 6th or 7th round, ping, the radar goes off.
Mark tape. Trey Brock is going to be the next Adam Thielen. I mean, you just heard it. So when he doesn't become the next Adam Thielen, you have to hold it against him.
I got Trey Brock as Adam Thielen. I got Alex Barnes as Emmitt Smith. What else have I said this year? I don't even like comps at all.
And you're throwing out the best of them. I mean, people are downloading this show forever. I mean, just to hear that hot take.
So I was looking for something I found pretty interesting the other day, and it was tweeted by David Johnson, and he said, "Y'all think the combine numbers correlate to NFL production?" He's asking, and somebody just posted his combine numbers and said, "It certainly did with you. You crushed the combine." And David Johnson responded, "Touche, but I believe the Senior Bowl helped me out much more." Now, that's quite interesting, but he also ended up still being a 3rd-round pick. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I'd be really interested, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I believe that Arizona may have been involved in coaching the Senior Bowl that year. I would be extremely interested to know if they were for certain, but I almost think that they were. And that goes back to what I was saying, that you could have a guy like David Johnson work with a coach from Arizona and all of a sudden become very, very much on their radar because they had an opportunity to work with him. Or it doesn't even have to be Arizona worked with him. Maybe Arizona was on the other side of the field, or they have some connections there. They're able to get a little bit of information. There's a lot of different stuff there. But again, I think And that's a great point, but I think it's much more important for the NFL just because we don't get that information. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information we don't get as fantasy guys.
Well, and wasn't the rumor that Arizona was on Abdullah? I mean, they wanted to take Amir Abdullah and ended up having to settle for David Johnson.
Same thing with the Redskins getting Geis when Lions traded in front of them to take carry on.
Yeah.
So we talked about the drills a little bit earlier, and kind of we hit really quickly on what kind of matters and what doesn't matter. I kind of want to go through the drills real quick, and I just want you guys to tell us what the drills translate to on film when we see these guys run these fast 40s. I mean, does it matter? Or do these running backs really ever get those 40-yard breakaways very often anyways?
I look much closer at your explosion numbers for running backs. So your broad jump and your vertical. I feel that is much more important for a running back. And you kind of alluded to it. There's not a lot of times that 40 speed really comes into play in the NFL unless they get that breakaway. And in the NFL, those breakaway home run hits don't happen all that often. It's great when they do. Saquon Barkley takes it to the house, and all of a sudden you have a highlight reel for NFL Network the next day. But we don't see that a lot in the NFL. You see that a lot in college. So you're right. Your running backs aren't hitting that top end speed that much. A guy like DK Metcalf, it is important to kind of go back to that a little bit within the context of if he's a deep threat, which he profiles as, but we already knew he was fast.
Yeah, it depends on the type of player. Running backs, you want to see under 4.6, but for me, it's a lot more about the 10-yard split on their 40-yard dash, not necessarily the 40 time, because it's that initial explosion. Same thing. I mean, Kyle talked about the explosive drills. I also am looking at short shuttle. I'm looking at the 3-cone because that's side to side. That's the wiggle. And you kind of have to look at, for me, how a guy plays on film. So we talked about Alex Barnes this week, and I said that he really had this quick, almost a slide step. It wasn't a jump cut that you see a lot of running backs have, but he's very elusive. And a lot of people watch his film and say, he doesn't have that quick twitch, that move in the hole. He does. It's subtle. But then watching the combine and watching him do the agility drills, it really reaffirmed that, man, that's what I saw. He has that. Same thing with the receivers. If you're talking about a guy, DK going and creating separation deep, you got to have that speed. If you're talking a guy like Isabella, if you're talking a guy like Renfro, it's the agility, it's that short shuttle, it's the 3-cone, because they're coming up and making a stem at the top of their route, 7, 10, 12 yards, maybe max, and relying on that quickness, that explosion off of that to create separation, not their speed down the field. And so it really does translate, positionally, but it doesn't translate. It's not like carte blanche, like one drill translates for everybody.
And that's what I'm actually do. The gauntlet is something that we didn't mention. I just wanted to mention that a little bit too, because I'm really weird in particular about catching. I'm not very vocal about it, but it drives me nuts when people aren't catching with their hands, because it always goes back to DK with me for some reason, but he's so strong and so fast, and I get that. But on the next level, he's not going against slouches. I mean, he's going to be up against Darius Slay. He's going to be up against Xavier Howard, Xavier Rhodes. Like, these guys aren't chumps. So I really want to see, and he does high punt the ball good. He's a freak. So I wanted to mention that, like, there's freaks at the cornerback position too next year. DK caught pretty well. I did joke with Jake that he did double clutch a ball, but he caught okay. But I really wanted to see some of those guys. Like Hunter Renfro did not look exceptional to me, and I thought he was supposed to have some pretty sticky hands, but he looked like he should have been delivering pizzas at the combine. He did not look like an NFL player, and I kind of liked him on film a little bit. So the gauntlet matters a little bit too, because in my mind, that's simulating what you're actually going to do in a real game.
Yeah, I'm really surprised you didn't bring it up, Zach. But I think all of the drills where they're catching, even the quarterback drills, it drives me crazy. They show at the bottom of the screen, they show the quarterback's name,
they don't
and
tell
not
the
the
receiver.
receiver.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I think it's okay. Yeah, it's that. Oh no, it isn't. Nope. Oh crap. I think all of those drills are so important, and it's hard. We opened the show with we're all adults and we all have a lot going on. It's hard to sit there and watch every single one of those, but I tried to watch as many as I could to get an idea of the short catching, how smooth running backs are coming out of the backfield catching, and then you had like the deep bombs which were actually part of the quarterback drills. How's the tracking? Are they basket catching, or are they actually actively going after it? So yeah, there's a ton going on in the combine that you can get out of it beyond just how fast is their 40.
I think my favorite is that little like 10-yard out with the toe drag swag at the end. That's because you see guys who've been working on their feet, which is something as a college player you're not necessarily thinking about unless you're preparing for that next level.
And I guess going back just a little bit, when it comes to some of those agility drills, I mean, in years past, can you guys think of any current veterans or current players rather that you saw going through the combine that you knew based off their drills that they were going to be hits? Like, did you see Stephon Diggs coming, going through the combine, or even
Cooper Kupp, man. Cooper Kupp was a guy that people killed because he was productive with a small school. His 40 time wasn't great. But then you looked at what he did, again, the agility drills. And aside from a guy like Jarvis Landry, who's another guy who got killed for the same thing. I mean, Jarvis Landry came out and he ran a 4.61 40. But his agility drills, and I know it was raining, and I know whatever, that's fine. But he came out and did the agility drills, and that's how he gets open. And it was the same thing watching Cooper Kupp. I'm like, this guy, I mean, you can go, it's on the Dynasty Dummies website. You can go read my Cooper Kupp write-up from a couple years ago, and I'm like, this guy is legit. You're going to call him a slot receiver, and that's fine because he's going to be a next-level slot receiver.
Good call.
Yeah. So, and looking at this, so we're through the combine, we're through, I mean, most of the big news now with just the pro days yet to be upon us. So with that being said, who's shifted for you guys, either up or down? I mean, how have there been any significant changes in your rankings since the combine?
I think we had to drop down Elijah Holyfield. As much as it hurt, we had some concerns about him, but we liked him as a runner. And this is another guy that we talked about probably a little too much in our last show. He's a guy that I will continue to watch, and while he has to go down in the rankings, I might be trying to sneak late in rookie drafts if he makes a team in any capacity. But yeah, there's definitely a handful of these guys that have shifted. We were already very high on Miles Sanders, but I
was just going to ask about him too.
I think he moved up even more. I haven't solidified any ranks personally. I don't fully commit to my ranks until after the draft. I just start putting them in areas, and Sanders was kind of, if we go with tiers, he was kind of straddling a tier, and he's right up there at the top now with the other big names.
You should try throwing a ranking out on Twitter. It's a lot of fun.
No, it isn't.
No, I mean, there's never any backlash. Nobody ever has any negative words to say about people's rankings on Twitter. It's just all great. It's therapeutic, really.
That's my posse went after a couple of guys. I just stood back and let it go. It was pretty funny.
I can't say the disrespect though, because if you went through the trouble of rankings, you obviously did more work than the random troll that just decided to tell you that your rankings suck.
And it's not even, I'm like, my rankings before the draft are not even a ranking. They're just, this is what I saw on film. and this is how I rated their film. And so it's not really a ranking because I don't have enough information. I just have me. And look, I'm not relying on just me, so why should I expect somebody else to rely on just me?
You know, Zach, at the end of the day, it was a Jets fan.
But you talk about combine numbers. The combine number that dropped the guy for me was 5'7". Greg Dortch came in at 5'7" and change, and I loved what he did on film. But it's so hard to be an NFL player at that size. I mean, I can't really think of. I guess Tyreek Hill might have been 5'8". They listed him at 5'10", but I think he was 5'8" at a pro day. I mean, who else? Tommy Lee Lewis.
I mean, Taylor Gabriel's pretty short, but he's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say Gabriel. How tall is Switzer?
But they're all. I mean, well, Switzer's not really a burner, but those guys are burners, and Dortch I don't think is. I think Dortch is probably closer to that prototypical slot receiver, getting open with quickness and savvy. And it's going to be hard with some of the more physical, the bigger corners, the stronger corners. If you're 5'7", even if you make a great move, there, a guy's got enough length to get around you, deflect the ball. Then it's a tip drill. Now you're in trouble.
I've been thinking a lot about Holyfield since I listened to your episode, and as dumbfounded as you guys feel towards his performance at the combine, do you almost just say, well, it doesn't matter, he's fast on film? I mean, if he was that fast on film, does it matter that he ran his 40 that slow?
Well, but I think you also have to take into account, the offensive line he's running behind, what the other guys in his offense are doing. And, again, he didn't catch the ball at all. So that immediately for me, I mean, it's not for everybody. I know a lot of people like the prototypical, the Adrian Peterson type running backs, and that's fine. I don't begrudge you that at all. That's not my bag. I like guys who catch the ball. And so I tentatively had Holyfield in my top 10. Now, all of a sudden, you look at his the combine and look at what he did physically, and you're going, okay, well, if I don't have the physical numbers, if I don't have the pass catching ability, that's not a guy I'm really interested in at all.
Let's take this kind of full circle again. We said earlier that the combine is important to NFL teams. Mm-hmm. My big concern here is that 4.78 may drop him maybe out of the draft altogether, or maybe he's a 7th round pick or something. Mm-hmm. He's losing. Unless he comes up to a pro day, it comes out that he was injured at the combine. He comes out, does a pro day, and runs something in like the 4.5s. Mm-hmm. He's falling down NFL draft boards. I would have to imagine. I don't know. I'm not in one of the war rooms, but I'm just guessing. And so now I'm really concerned about. I'm not going to take him. What was probably going to be a 2nd round rookie pick. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take him there now. If what I'm envisioning at this stage plays out, where he goes much later in the NFL draft, has none of that draft capital, and is a little bit of an afterthought. But going back to what you brought up, I don't see a guy who runs that slow, and so that's why I'm putting a star next to his name. I'm writing his name down on a sticky note and sticking it up on the wall, and I'm keeping an eye on where he's going, as other people may start to forget about him, may see that 4.78, take him off the board altogether, forget about him, move on. I'm going to keep him around in my thoughts, and maybe as a 5th round pick, maybe as just a waiver wire pickup. At the very least, he's going to get the watch list click, and I'll be paying attention to what happens with him.
Now, the last thing that we wanted to do was just a quick exercise. We're going to have to just do one player due to time, but I want to take a player from each of you and just kind of discuss what about their combine moved them up or down, since we just said there was a little bit of movement, and, one of them was Elijah Holyfield. There's just somebody that their combine just kind of stood out to you so that we can kind of show the listeners the process that they're going through when they're watching the combine.
Kyle, you're going to take Paris Campbell or Maya? I'll step up.
I'll let you start out with him. I'm actually still trying to decide who I want to talk about.
So Paris Campbell was a guy. I mean, if you listen to our show, if you listen to the Dynasty Crossroads, I guessed it on there, and I twisted Peter Howard's arm to talk about Paris Campbell, because I know that he wasn't a fan because he didn't have the market share numbers, but it was a guy on film that I watched who obviously possessed speed, although he didn't always use it because they weren't using him vertically. I think Travis May had a stat where he'd never had a ball that had more than 12 air yards under it. Like, he was never thrown to that far down the field. So he played slot, but I was excited to see what the combine would bring. And all of a sudden you see him come out with a 4.3 140. You see him with a 40-inch vertical. You see him with a 135 broad. You see him at just above a 4. It was like a 4.02 short shuttle, like all of these things. And so you're sitting there going, okay, speed checks the box. Burst checks the box. Agility checks the box. Okay, all of that stuff. Plus, watching him on film, and I said this before on our show, he is one of the only receivers I've ever said has contact balance when he's got the ball. He catches the ball, and then he becomes a running back, and he'll absorb contact and then keep going. And if a guy doesn't make that initial tackle, 4-3-1, bang, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to Alex Barnes. We brought him up a little bit before, but he is a guy that pretty much equaled in my dummy cheat sheet, pretty much equaled Nick Chubb as far as a physical score. And I'm not saying he's Nick Chubb. I'm not making that comparison. He scored a hair higher than Chubb. So it's not a comparison score, but it's a physicality. And I mentioned earlier, but in the case of the running backs, BMI and explosiveness are extremely important in this scoring. It's weighted kind of heavily towards those. And so you've got a guy here that was kind of on the radar. He was out there, showed up at the combine and obliterated everything but the 40, you could say. The 40, he ran a 4.59.
Sub 4.6 though.
Sub 4.6, exactly. So that hits the threshold that we want. He came in over the 30 BMI, hits the threshold that we want, and then just crushed the agility and the explosion. And so going back to what we just said with Holyfield, you may now have a guy that might have been a 6th, 7th undrafted priority free agent type of player, coming from a small school, a little bit off the radar, that because he had such a great combine performance, teams will pay attention to him a little bit more. And I'm not saying he's going to go in the first round. I'm not saying he's going to go in the second round, but maybe he gets a 3rd, 4th round pick and has a legit shot at probably starting out part of a committee, and maybe works up towards more. If
you're a Damian Williams owner, be afraid.
Yeah. So he would be excellent there. Absolutely. Kansas City would be a perfect spot for him. You saw in the gauntlet and other pass catching drills, he is very smooth catching. And so kind of checking all these boxes and moving up draft boards, I believe, again, not in the war rooms. I don't have any inside information there, but I just kind of I take the information I can and I say, well, it would make sense that if I'm an NFL team, I'm going to start paying attention to this guy now. Now they can go back and they can look at the film, they can look at the production, and it starts to really create a picture for them. So Alex Barnes is moving up. It's dependent on the NFL draft and how that plays out, but right now he's moved up.
So this is just really quick, just to throw this in, and because I've heard his name thrown out quite a bit, and I'm still trying to figure out how to approach him for this draft. And of course, the NFL draft will really, I guess, that'll be the final judgment as to what we'll do with him as the dynasty community. But what are you guys doing with Ashton Doolin? I guess I'm really struck as to his production, but then if you factor in him coming from a university that I had to look up to make sure that it was real, how do you guys marry those two, I guess, conflicting pieces of information when you see a guy that, one, he showed well at the combine, his production numbers are, I guess, they hit most of the thresholds we would want, but then it's if you watch the tape and then you see what type of competition he was up against, I guess there's a conflict there. So how do you guys approach other types, or how have you approached prospects like that in the past?
Let me spin it around on you. How would you approach if Cordero Patterson was in this draft right now?
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
Because I think realistically what you're looking at for a ceiling is a kick returner that has some upside as a kick returner and then gets on the field as and I know the Patriots used Patterson kind of creatively this year,
but that's the best outcome for him, right?
That is the absolute best, right? That he gets some of those generating plays, those targeted plays where the entire play is designed around getting him the ball in space and going with it and
Tavon Austin plays.
Yeah, it really, that's the ceiling for him, in my opinion. I don't think he's polished enough in any way, and he didn't come out and burn. He ran okay, but he didn't burn in any sense. So he's not really dropping himself into the, hey, I'm really, really fast category, so you should draft me and take a flyer on me there. So would you overextend yourself to go after, knowing what you know from Cordero Patterson or Tavon Austin today, knowing that you're going to get that career arc as a absolute ceiling, and the floor is Moritz Bowinger out of the league and just doesn't really do anything, unfortunately. I bring his name up all the time because I really wanted to see him hit. I really liked him. He's that small school guy that you wanted to do it, but
it's Mobo FOMO, you know.
There you go. I like that.
But I'm kind of aghast though that you didn't know Malone University. Malone wasn't on your radar.
No,
that's a powerhouse. I mean, they're churning out guys. No, I had to look it up.
When they shut the program down, it was so much of a powerhouse.
Well, right? Because and the only reason I watched Ashton Doolin tape is because Miguel Chapton and Peter Howard both had him on their list, and I've got Peter Howard's little market share thing, and it was because, you know, he had 2 seasons over 50% market share. He ended up with almost a 43% market share for his career. So, okay, you've got my attention. So I went and watched, and they did a lot of bubble screens. They did a lot of running him in the backfield, jet sweep, that sort of thing. And when he was asked to actually create separation, he was not quick enough with his breaks to give enough cushion. And granted, his quarterback is not going to be an NFL level quarterback, but you still got to give him a chance to get you the ball without the defender being in between you. And he wasn't quick enough that way to provide that cushion, to provide that window for a guy to throw in. I'm with Kyle. Like, he was really impressive. Kick returns. The 3 games that I found 3 full games, and 2 of them he returned the first kickoff past the other team, past the 50, like to the other 40. The other time he was like to the 50, and then the rest of the time the other teams were like, we're either going to pooch kick it or we're going to kick it out of bounds. You can have it at your 40. How would giving it to you at our 40? Like, we're going to save it. That may be his role in the NFL. It's valuable in the NFL. I mean, don't tell anybody this. We're Patriots fans. So we've got the Belichick, all 3 phases of the game, and special teams matters just as much in the NFL as offense and defense. Ashton Doolin is going to be a guy who can provide a spark. Special teams, not for your fantasy team, I don't think.
Well, kick return has mattered. If the NFL has anything to do with it, then they're trying to get rid of that.
Yeah,
and they're working more and more towards that.
I thought you were talking about our first home league together, where the kick return points were just unbelievable, and you wanted all of the returners.
It was such an amazing league. Before we knew anything, we created a league and just went crazy on the settings. And
Cribs, baby, Cribs.
Joshua Cribs. And I'm drawing a blank. Who's the guy from
Hester?
the Bears?
Hester.
Yeah, thank you. Those are the guys that own. Those were the 2 guys that won you the league.
Oh,
and it was funny. Like, Kyle and I we had 10 other guys in the league, and Kyle and I were the 2 that figured it out first. Like, it was completely by accident. Somebody else had set up the league, and we were like, Oh, kick returners. And then he and I are like waiver wire going back and forth trying to get the kick returners.
We dropped pretty much every other skill position player and just grabbed all the kick returners.
Wow.
Now, before Chris kicks us out of here, I wanted to add that I love market share data and I love the analytics side of things. I think I like concrete evidence a little bit more because I don't think I trust myself quite as much watching the film. But what worries me about market share data from small schools is like, so when I played football in 8th grade, I played tight end and I would catch about 16 passes a game. We had 12 kids on our team and I was about the only one that could catch the football. So when you go look at Malone University, they're not very good. And if you remember playing football, especially in high school, when you had that one kid that was just dominant, your coach just fed them the ball nonstop. I mean, the other kids on the team were like, man, parents are calling in trying to get their kids the ball at that point. So that was kids' parents from Malone University calling the coach to tell him to stop giving action dueling the ball.
This is why I bring up Moritz Boehringer, because if you remember, you go back to him, if you had watched it, I mean, they showed those highlights during the draft when he was drafted of him just running circles around everybody else
German
on the field.
National League.
I mean, when you you're exactly right. When you have one guy on a team that's just head and shoulders above everyone else, who's the tight end, the 6'8" tight end?
Shaheen.
No.
Oh, in this draft.
Yeah, Donald Parham.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're just bigger than everybody else, you're gonna win. And so you're right about market share. But I think even maybe the bigger message to it, the more important message is don't rely on one data set.
Yeah.
Spread your wings, look at everything. And this goes back to our whole philosophy of we are dummies, so don't just listen to us. Everybody out there, to some extent, is a dummy. I'm putting quotations around that. Don't just listen to one person. Look at everything that you can. And Zach, I think you might have gotten this quote from somebody, but it goes along the lines of using this number just limits the amount that you'll fail, and then using this limits the amount that you'll fail some more. I mean, you can do that more justice than I can.
Yeah, no, it's just you're mitigating. All of the guys who are analytics guys or numbers guys are just mitigating the chance of failure. I mean, if you get a threshold stat that says, okay, these guys succeed 26% of the time, that's better than somebody who doesn't have that threshold stat. And it's just, I mean, Peter Howard says it probably best when he says, why would you ever ignore information? We just take it in from everywhere. And that's part of the thing. We love this show. I mean, I'm a listener from the very beginning. And I know, Adam, you and I have talked about this. I said the very first time I listened, I was working at the shipyard. I was on the aft end of a destroyer, painting out some VLSs and listening to your show and thinking, this is exactly it. You guys are taking, guys who have a particular focus, a particular area of expertise. You're bringing them in, you're listening to them. And not only are you guys gaining that knowledge, but you're sharing it with everybody. And that's just, it's beautiful. I love it.
And that's what we try and do here on the Dynasty Owners Manual podcast. And so with that, I mean, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and sitting down with us tonight. I think we could probably go for at least another hour going through as many prospects and just like historical aspect of how you guys like go through some of these prospects and whatnot. But before we get you guys out of here, I mean, please share with us any upcoming shows or any content that you guys have planned in the near future, things that folks can look for once they go follow you. Shout out your Twitter handles, pimp as much content as you want. And the floor is yours, gentlemen.
We have a lot of ideas right now, and well, again, as you opened it up, we're adults and not a lot of time, and things are getting messy. We introduced a new show recently called the Dummy Roundtable, and we desperately want to do that again. It's just been brutal trying to find the time, but hopefully we'll be able to continue that. That's getting 6 people on the same schedule. You thought 4 was bad. We most likely will be doing, and we did it last year, we'll most likely be doing the night 2 of the NFL draft, a live show around that. That was a lot of fun last year, so we are efforting towards making that happen on our end. But other than that, weekly we do the Dynasty Dummies show. And yeah, just search Dynasty Dummies. We're pretty much everywhere where you can listen to a podcast. And of course, you can find us on Twitter at Dynasty Dummies. My Twitter handle's at LaBreck.
Yeah, we'd be remiss, though, if we didn't mention that eventually the Blitz will return with J. Mike, who is our third dummy, and he is fantastic. I don't know if you listened to that show in season, but it was 15 minutes in your face of absolutely everything that you could possibly want to know during the week. And he, for me, is one of my most valuable dynasty assets, a guy I lean on a lot because he asks the questions that makes everybody else think. And that is invaluable. It's amazing. So he's at J. Mike Check. I'm at Tacit Assassin 13. And to hop on, I forgot the Dynasty Dummies website. I got like 7,000, 8,000 words on rookies. If you want to know what I thought and maybe take some information from that, make fun of me, whatever you want. I mean, have fun, but that's on the Dynasty Dummies website.
You said J Mike's the third dummy. Realistically, he's the best dummy.
Oh, easy. Not even close.
Yeah, don't tell him that though. That might go to his head. We also, hopefully, if I can find a few minutes to finish it, we should have the dummy cheat sheet hitting the website here soon as well. If you don't know what that is, go to the website right now and you can see last year's version and you can see how guys like Saquon scored. And
or if you look at 2 years ago, you can see Kyle gave you Kittle, wherever you wanted to take him.
Ooh,
yeah,
I like that. I like it. Okay, so before again, thanks, gentlemen, and then Adam. Do we have anything else for the folks before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, I hope all the listeners just heard me whisper cheat sheet because I can't wait to. Kyle, you've been promising me put on your whole life and just finish the cheat sheet. So I've been listening to Dynasty Dummies. So the first podcast that I listened to when I got into the podcast scene. I mean, I'd been in fantasy for years, but when I started taking in information, Dynasty Dummies were the first ones, and I'd go back and forth, dummies and nerds. That's how I remembered it, back and forth between the episodes. But you guys have been doing great work. I'm so thankful for you guys coming out, and we've also got our guys at Owner's Manual doing great work. We got the Best Ball Owner's Manual coming out. We told you about that. Brad Reyes is going to do a great job. Devi Owner's Manual just did the Combine episode. So now that you've got some practical application for the Combine, go ahead and head over there and get a little bit more direct player insight there. Don't forget about the T-shirts, FF_outfitters. You can find me at APWILDE. And also today I thought that the first playoff tiebreaker was head-to-head, and it is in fact strength of schedule. So Ed, you were right.
Okay. All right. So then for the Dynasty Dummies, thanks again, gentlemen. For Adam, I'm Chris Allen at Chris Allen FFWX on Twitter. We thank you guys for coming out, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Great work, guys.
Hey, thank you, fellas. That was awesome.
Gentlemen, that was goodness gracious.